All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Open Court podcast. I have my friend TJ here, and I'm going to be interviewing him on how COVID has impacted the sports at his college. TJ, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm TJ. I go to Hofstra University in Hempstead, New York.
And you play soccer there, right?
Yeah.
All right. So, first question. So, what would you say like the difference between a sports season now with COVID is compared to like a sports season without COVID?
Yeah. So I think before, your experience in college would be centered around the sport that you play. Like obviously there's a separate academic side versus sports side, but there's a heavy focus on sports. But now with COVID, because there's restrictions with practices and games, I think a lot of student athletes are kind of more now students than athlete.
hmm How would you say COVID has like affected the practices in sports? Like, is there any like safety protocols in place there?
Yeah, so we can only have practices outside. We weren't practicing for a few months. We just started just a few weeks ago, and it's interesting because we our practices have just started, and that's when we would have been halfway through the season technically, given like normal circumstances. So everything's kind of late and delayed.
Yeah. What are like the safety protocols with like mask and stuff?
Yeah, so we practice in masks most of the time, unless it's like heavy cardio stuff or we don't need to be near each other. Um, we're not doing a lot of like contact drills as much as contact as there is in soccer. And then everything is outside, so we're not really inside training at all.
hmm would you say you personally feel safe from or playing your sport in the COVID era?
Um, yes and no. I think given what Hofstra has done with its guidelines, like for sports and just for the campus itself, I feel safe being around my team. But I definitely think it would be a different story if there weren't as many restrictions or if we were traveling around all the time.
Um, do you know how like a quarantine situation or like if someone tested positive on the team, like how that would work out?
Yeah, so we have an entire separate housing area on our campus where all the quarantining students go. So um, if one person on the team tests positive, then the entire team needs to quarantine. But we get tested to see if we can get out of quarantine early or not.
Mm. Would you say you're having as much fun playing now as you would without COVID?
Yeah, totally. I think it's definitely a different experience, but it's bonding to be with the team during these kind of weird times.
Mhm. So how would you say like the mask process is going? Like, do you think it's too excessive? Like, are people like following the mask guidelines and stuff?
Um, for the most part, it's a yeah. So, um, you know, at Hofstra, basically you need to wear your mask all the time unless you're outside and not near anybody. Um, but like I think it's a total pain, but I completely agree with the protocols because I would rather wear a mask all the time for a short amount of time than kind of go 50% on it and have to do it for the next 2 years.
hmm do you think that there's any changes that need to be made for the like protocols and just the way things run for the safety purposes?
At my school, I actually think they're doing a great job. I just wish the strict regimen of mask wearing was more universal. So I wish like everywhere was doing this because it feels good that I'm part of a community that's making the effort to try and combat the spread of COVID-19, but you're not seeing it matched really anywhere else.
Mhm. Um, so like I know here we've had sports teams that have had to quarantine, and you were telling me how you had I think it was the basketball team had to like quarantine. Like, do you think it would be like safe for that team's season to resume? Like, and do you think that'll happen?
Yeah, so I think as long as there's consistent testing and they've quarantined for the 2 weeks or whatever the safe amount of time is, then I think it would be uh, more than safe for them to go back. I um, I just think they should look at what happened to cause the positive test and then try and snuff that out before it keeps coming up again.
Mhm. Is there anything else COVID related, sports or just in general at your school that you want to talk about?
Um, there's nothing really that special that Hofstra's doing, but I think, I guess the one takeaway I got is they're very serious about this whole process and trying to do our part as a school community to slow down the spread and keep everyone safe. Because I think there's a common misconception, especially with masks, that um, it's kind of optional, but you're not wearing a mask to protect you, you're wearing a mask to protect everyone else. And it's vice versa. So I wear a mask to protect you, you wear a mask to protect me. And I think that kind of culture has been solidified here, and I hope to see it spread to other schools. Well, I guess not spread, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. All right.
Poor choice of words.
All right. Well, thank you, TJ, for this interview. Um, Thank you, everyone, for listening. I will see you all later.